Stop trying to make her feel something. That is the move. Not the perfect text. Not the clever line. Not the late-night paragraph where you finally explain everything she should have understood the first time. Not the attempt to make her jealous. Not the cold silence that secretly hopes she panics. Not the emotional performance where you pretend you don't care while checking your phone every 3 minutes. The move that changes everything is much quieter than that. You stop overextending yourself. You stop filling every silence. You stop chasing clarity from someone who keeps making you feel confused. And when you do it once, calmly, without announcing it, without making a scene, without trying to punish her, something shifts. Because people can feel when access to you changes. They can feel when the attention they were taking for granted is no longer automatic. They can feel when your energy stops reaching forward, stops begging, stops leaning across the table trying to pull them closer. They can feel when you return to yourself. And that is what this is really about. Not control over her, control over yourself. Because the truth is, if you are watching this, there is a good chance you have already tried the other way. You have tried being more available, more understanding, more patient, more expressive. You have tried explaining your intentions, proving your loyalty, showing her that you are different, showing her that you care, showing her that you are serious. And maybe at first, it felt like the right thing to do. Because when you care about someone, of course you want to communicate. Of course you want to fix the misunderstanding. Of course you want to close the distance. That does not make you weak. That makes you human. But here is where things get painful. There is a point where healthy communication turns into self-abandonment. There is a point where effort stops being romantic and starts becoming emotional overfunctioning. There is a point where you are not expressing yourself anymore. You are auditioning. You are trying to convince someone to value what should already be visible. And the moment you feel yourself doing that, the silent move becomes necessary. Not because you want to manipulate her, because you need to stop manipulating yourself into accepting less than peace. Now, let's be clear about something before we go deeper. This advice is for situations where there is basic respect, emotional safety, and a normal dating or relationship dynamic that has become unbalanced. If someone is abusive, cruel, manipulative, or constantly disrespectful, the answer is not a strategy to get their attention. The answer is support, distance, and safety. You do not need to win over someone who harms you, but if what you are dealing with is inconsistency, mixed signals, emotional distance, hot and cold behavior, or the painful feeling that you are investing more than she is, then pay attention. Because the silent move that changes everything is not silence as a weapon. It is silence as self-respect. It is the moment you stop trying to drag someone into emotional maturity. And this is why it has such a strong psychological impact. When someone gets used to a pattern, they stop consciously noticing it. If you are always the one who reaches out first, that becomes normal. If you are always the one who smooths things over, that becomes expected. If you are always the one who waits, explains, forgives quickly, adjusts your tone, checks in, sends another message, and absorbs the awkwardness that becomes the emotional structure of the connection. She may not even realize she is relying on it, but she is. Your attention becomes the cushion. Your patience becomes the safety net. Your availability becomes the background music she assumes will keep playing no matter what she does. Then one day, it stops. Not dramatically, just quietly. You do not send the extra message. You do not over-explain. You do not ask, "Are we okay?" For the 5th time. You do not chase the same conversation in a different outfit. You let the silence sit there. And suddenly, the pattern breaks. That is when the mind wakes up. Because the human brain notices change more than it notices consistency. It adapts to what is always there, but it pays attention when something familiar is missing. That is why someone can overlook your presence for weeks, then feel your absence in one day. Not because absence is magic, but because change creates awareness. And if your presence has been steady, generous, warm, and available, your emotional withdrawal is not invisible. It is felt. But the key is this: it only works when it is real. If you go silent for 3 hours, hoping she checks your story, that is not self-respect. That is performance. If you stop texting but spend the whole day obsessing over whether she noticed, you are still emotionally chasing her. Your thumbs are not moving, but your nervous system is running toward her at full speed. The real move is internal first. That sentence changes your posture. You breathe differently. You move differently. You stop needing every tiny signal to mean something. You stop treating her delayed reply like a verdict on your worth. You stop making her mood the weather system of your entire day. And when that happens, your energy changes in a way that cannot be faked. This is where many people misunderstand attraction. They think attraction is built by doing more compliments, more availability, more emotional intensity, more effort. And yes, in a healthy connection, effort matters. Communication matters. Warmth matters. But effort without self-respect does not create attraction. It creates pressure. When you keep leaning in, while the other person keeps leaning back, you create a dynamic where your desire starts to feel heavy. Even if your intentions are good, the energy becomes unbalanced. You are no longer meeting her in the middle. You are crossing the entire bridge and then wondering why she stopped walking. The silent move is when you return to your side of the bridge. You do not burn it. You do not shout across it. You simply stop crossing it alone. And that is powerful, because suddenly she has to feel the distance she helped create. Now, let's talk about the first shift that happens when you do this once. You stop explaining yourself. This is one of the hardest habits to break, especially if you are someone who cares deeply, thinks deeply, and wants to be understood. When you feel someone pulling away, your instinct may be to explain more. You want to make sure she knows your heart. You want to make sure she knows you are not trying to pressure her. You want to make sure she knows you care, but not too much, that you are interested, but not needy, that you are serious, but not intense. So you start editing yourself in real time. You send the message, then reread it. You add softness. You remove directness. You explain the explanation. And before you know it, you are not communicating. You are managing her perception of you. That is exhausting. And it lowers your value in your own eyes. Because every time you over-explain to someone who is not making an effort to understand you, you teach yourself that your truth is not enough unless it is packaged perfectly. That is it. No extra paragraph. No emotional courtroom. No closing argument. Imagine this. You told her you felt like the communication had become one-sided. You said it calmly. You were honest, not aggressive. She brushed it off, gave a vague answer, or turned it into something you now have to apologize for. The old version of you might try again. You might say, "No, that's not what I meant." Then explain your tone, your intention, your history, your feelings, your hope. But the grounded version of you does something different. You let your first clear statement stand. You do not chase someone into understanding. You allow them to reveal whether they want to understand. That is a completely different energy. And psychologically, it changes the frame. You are no longer the person asking to be heard. You are the person who knows what he said, meant what he said, and does not need to beg for basic emotional consideration. That kind of steadiness is rare. It does not mean you become stubborn. It does not mean you refuse to clarify when clarification is genuinely needed. It means you stop explaining yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, minimizing you, or keeping you in a position where you constantly have to prove that your feelings are valid. Here is the actionable part. The next time you feel the urge to send a long message, pause before you send it. Open your Notes app instead. Write exactly what you want to say. Do not censor it. Let it all come out. Then wait 20 minutes. If it is communication, you can send something simple. If it is reassurance seeking, do not send it. Give yourself the reassurance first. That one pause can save your dignity. And more importantly, it teaches your nervous system that discomfort is not an emergency. Now, here is where it gets even more interesting. The second shift is that you remove easy access. Not all access, easy access. There is a difference. Removing access does not mean disappearing to create panic. It does not mean being rude, cold, or deliberately unavailable. It means you stop making yourself instantly reachable to someone who is not treating your presence with care. Because access is a privilege. Your time is not nothing. Your attention is not nothing. Your emotional energy is not something people should be able to pick up and put down whenever they feel like it. But when you respond instantly every time, adjust your schedule every time, answer every vague message with enthusiasm, and stay emotionally open no matter how inconsistent the other person is, you may accidentally teach them that your access has no conditions. That is not love. That is leakage. You are leaking energy into a place that is not pouring back into you. The silent move closes the leak. You just stop being so easily available. If she sends a lazy message after days of distance, you do not reward it with your full emotional presence. If she says, "Hey," after ignoring your thoughtful message, you do not immediately jump into warmth as if nothing happened. You can respond politely. You can be calm. But you do not hand over the same access she had when she was showing up with consistency. This matters because attraction is not only about liking someone, it is also about recognizing value, and people often recognize value through boundaries. Think about anything precious in life: a private space, a meaningful conversation, a person's trust, a real opportunity. None of these things feel valuable because they are impossible to access. They feel valuable because access requires respect. Your energy should be the same. If she is warm, present, honest, and engaged, meet her there. If she is distant, vague, dismissive, or careless, step back. Not as punishment, as alignment. You are simply matching reality. Let's say she cancels plans last minute, gives a weak excuse, and does not offer another time. The old version of you might say, "No worries, whenever works for you," even though inside you feel disappointed. You might keep the door wide open because you are afraid that showing any standard will push her away. But the grounded version says, "No problem." Then you go live your life. You do not suggest 3 new times. You do not keep the conversation alive. You do not try to rescue the momentum she dropped. You place the ball where it belongs. That is the silent move in action. And that kind of calm boundary does something very specific. It forces clarity. If she is genuinely interested, she will feel the space and step into it. If she is not, the space will reveal that too. Either way, you win, because you stop confusing crumbs for connection. This brings us to the third shift. You become emotionally unpredictable in a healthy way. Now be careful with that phrase. This does not mean you become inconsistent, moody, or confusing. That is not attractive. That is immature. Healthy unpredictability means you are no longer controlled by the old script. She expects you to chase. You do not. She expects you to over-explain. You do not. She expects you to absorb the tension and fix it. You do not. She expects your emotions to orbit around her behavior. They stop. That is a pattern interruption. And pattern interruption is powerful because it wakes people up from automatic behavior. When someone knows exactly how you will respond, they do not have to think deeply about their actions. They already know you will smooth it over. They already know you will come back. They already know you will ask what is wrong. They already know you will make the emotional labor easy for them. But when you respond differently, calmly and respectfully, the automatic pattern breaks. Now she has to think. Again, this is not about making her suffer. It is about refusing to keep participating in a dynamic that makes you smaller. There is something deeply magnetic about a person who is not easily pulled out of themselves. Not because they are cold, not because they are detached from feeling, but because they have a center. They can care without collapsing. They can be interested without becoming desperate. They can be open without becoming available to disrespect. That is the balance, and most people rarely encounter it. Many people are used to 2 extremes. One person chases and loses themselves. Another person shuts down and acts like they do not care. But grounded self-control is different. That sentence carries weight. Here is what this looks like in real life. She becomes distant. Her replies are shorter. You feel the anxiety rise in your chest. You want to ask what changed. You want to send something playful to bring the energy back. You want to check whether she is still interested. Instead, you slow down. You do not mirror her coldness, but you also do not compensate for it. You respond with calm warmth if needed. Then you return to your day. You go to the gym. You finish your work. You meet a friend. You do not keep your phone face up like it is a life support machine. That is not pretending. That is training. You are training your body to understand that uncertainty is survivable. And when you stop acting from panic, you become much harder to emotionally control. This is where the silent move becomes less about her reaction and more about your freedom. Because maybe she does come closer. Maybe she notices. Maybe she becomes curious. Maybe she realizes she liked the attention more than she admitted. Maybe she feels the loss of your warmth and starts wondering what changed. But maybe she does not. And that is why your move cannot be a tactic. If your silence only exists to get a response, then her silence will destroy you. But if your silence exists to protect your peace, then her silence gives you information. That is power, not control. Power. Now the fourth shift is the one that really changes how she sees you. You return to your own life. This sounds simple, but most people do not actually do it. They pull back physically, but mentally they stay attached. They stop texting, but they keep analyzing. They go out with friends, but they are still wondering whether she watched their story. They post something, but it is secretly for her. They say they are focusing on themselves, but she is still the invisible audience behind every move. That is not returning to your life. That is performing independence. Real self-return is quieter. It means you start making decisions that have nothing to do with whether she notices. You clean your room because your environment affects your mind. You go train because your body deserves strength. You reconnect with people who actually show up for you. You work on the project you kept postponing. You make plans that do not depend on her availability. You stop treating your life like a waiting room, because that is what happens when someone becomes too important too quickly. Your own life starts to feel paused. You are technically living, but emotionally waiting. Waiting for the reply. Waiting for the mood shift. Waiting for the reassurance. Waiting for the moment she finally becomes consistent. And while you wait, you slowly disappear from yourself. The silent move brings you back, not with a grand declaration, with small decisions. Tonight, you do not sit around hoping she texts. You make dinner, put your phone in another room, and watch something that actually relaxes you. Tomorrow, you do the thing you said you would do before this situation consumed your attention. This week, you schedule 3 things that belong only to you. A workout, a meeting with someone who energizes you, a quiet hour somewhere your mind can breathe. Put them in your calendar like commitments, because they are commitments to yourself. That is not generic advice. That is emotional reconstruction. You are rebuilding the parts of your life that got pushed aside when her attention became the prize. And here is the fascinating part. When you genuinely return to your own life, your energy becomes different. You are no longer hovering. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You already matter. And when you know that, people feel it. They may not know how to name it, but they feel the shift. Your replies become cleaner. Your tone becomes less anxious. Your presence becomes more grounded. You are not trying to extract validation from every interaction. You are just there. Whole. That is attractive because wholeness is rare. Most people are walking around trying to get someone else to complete the emotional sentence they never finished within themselves. So when someone shows up with their own life, their own rhythm, their own standards, their own center, it stands out. It creates curiosity. It creates respect. That can feel like losing control. But what she is really losing is not control over you. She is losing the version of you that overgave. And that version needed to go. Now let's go deeper into the 5th shift. You let her meet the consequence of her energy. This might be the most mature part of the whole process, because many people are terrified of letting someone experience consequences. They think a consequence has to be harsh. They think it means punishment, anger, withdrawal, or some dramatic emotional wall. But consequences can be quiet. If someone gives low effort, they receive less access. If someone communicates vaguely, they receive less emotional investment. If someone is inconsistent, they no longer get the benefits of consistency from you. That is not cruelty. That is reality. You are not creating pain. You are removing the cushion that protected them from the natural result of their behavior. And this is essential in dating and relationships, because without consequences, words become meaningless. You can say you want consistency, but if you keep rewarding inconsistency with full access, your actions say something else. You can say you value respect, but if you keep accepting disrespect with a smile because you are afraid to lose her, your boundary has no weight. A boundary is not what you announce. A boundary is what changes when the line is crossed. That is why the silent move is so powerful. It does not argue. It does not beg. It does not try to convince. It simply changes your participation. Let's make this practical. If she only reaches out when she is bored, you stop being her boredom cure. If she is warm in private but dismissive in public, you stop giving private warmth the same depth. If she disappears and returns like nothing happened, you do not pretend nothing happened. You can be calm and still have standards. Then stop talking. Do not turn it into a debate. Do not soften it 5 times. No, say it cleanly. Then let her response show you where she is. This is important because the right person will not be offended by your self-respect. They may feel challenged. They may need a moment. They may not be used to it. But someone with genuine care will not punish you for having a standard. Someone who only liked your lack of boundaries will, and that is information you need. There is a painful truth here, but it will set you free if you let it. Sometimes you are not afraid of losing her. You are afraid of losing the fantasy of who she could be if she finally treated you the way you hoped. That fantasy can keep you attached longer than the actual connection deserves. But while you are waiting for her potential, your present is being drained. The silent move interrupts that fantasy. It brings you back to what is actually happening. Not what could happen. Not what she might feel deep down. Not what her mixed signals might secretly mean. What is happening? Is she showing up? Is she communicating? Is she respecting your time? Is she making space for you? Is there mutual effort? Those questions matter more than chemistry, because chemistry without consistency can become addiction. It gives you highs and lows. It keeps you reaching. It makes small moments feel huge because they are surrounded by uncertainty. A warm reply after 3 cold days should not feel like winning the lottery. That is not romance. That is nervous system confusion. And you deserve better than a connection that only feels powerful because it keeps you starving. This is why the silent move is not about making her obsessed. It is about making you sober. Sober from the chase. Sober from the fantasy. Sober from the belief that if you just do one more thing correctly, someone else will finally become emotionally available. You cannot perform someone into readiness. You cannot love someone into consistency. You cannot explain someone into valuing you. You can only show up with honesty, observe what they do with it, and choose accordingly. That is maturity. Now, I know what some part of you may be thinking. This fear is understandable, especially if you have been told that love means constant effort, especially if you have lost people before, especially if your nervous system learned that distance means danger. But listen carefully. The right kind of person will not require you to abandon yourself to prove that you care. Healthy interest can survive a boundary. Real connection can handle space. If the only thing keeping her engaged is your constant pursuit, then what you have is not a balanced connection. It is momentum created by your effort. And the moment you stop pushing, it stops moving. That may hurt to see. But it is better to see it now than to spend months trying to animate something that has no life of its own. When you pull back in a grounded way, one of 2 things happens. Either she steps forward with more clarity, more respect, and more genuine effort, or she lets the distance grow. Both outcomes help you, because both reveal the truth, and truth is kinder than confusion, even when it stings. Now let's talk about what not to do, because this is where many people ruin the power of the silent move. Do not announce your withdrawal like a threat. Do not post quotes clearly aimed at her. Do not suddenly become cold to provoke a reaction. Do not flirt with someone else just to create jealousy. Do not punish her for not meeting expectations you never clearly communicated. Those things are not power. They are pain wearing a costume. Real power is clean. It does not need an audience. It does not need revenge. It does not need her to suffer. Real power says, I know what I bring. I know what I need. That is the energy you want. Calm, clear, firm, warm when it is welcomed, distant when it is necessary. And here is the part that will challenge you. You have to be willing to lose the connection in order to stop losing yourself. That does not mean you want to lose it. It does not mean you do not care. It means you refuse to keep a connection alive by becoming smaller, quieter, more anxious, more available, and less honest. Because if keeping someone requires you to betray your own nervous system, your own standards, your own peace, then what are you actually keeping? A relationship should add depth to your life, not turn you into someone who is constantly trying to decode whether you matter. And when you finally understand this, the silent move stops feeling like a tactic and starts feeling like relief. You do not have to keep chasing. You do not have to keep proving. You do not have to keep explaining basic things to someone who benefits from not understanding. You can step back. You can breathe. You can let the emotional dust settle. And then you can see clearly. Sometimes, when you do this once, she will feel the shift immediately. She may reach out. She may become warmer. She may ask if something is wrong. She may suddenly show more interest because your absence has made your presence visible again. If that happens, do not rush back into the old pattern. This is important. When someone comes closer after you pull back, your job is not to immediately reward them with full access. Your job is to observe whether the change is real. Curiosity is not consistency. A sudden text is not accountability. Missing your attention is not the same as valuing your heart. So stay grounded. You can be kind. You can engage. But do not abandon the standard that brought you back to yourself. Let her effort unfold over time. If she says, you've been distant, you do not need to be defensive. Simple. No accusation. No drama. No emotional trap. Just truth. And then, watch. Does she get curious and open a real conversation? Does she become dismissive? Does she try to pull you back into the old dynamic without offering anything different? Her response tells you everything. This is the part of dating and relationships people often avoid. They want the technique that guarantees a certain reaction. But healthy love is not about forcing reactions. It is about revealing alignment. You are not trying to make her become someone else. You are trying to see who she is when you stop overcompensating. That is the real test. Because anyone can enjoy your attention. Anyone can enjoy being wanted. Anyone can enjoy the comfort of knowing you are there. But not everyone is willing to meet you with the same care. The silent move reveals that difference. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Now I want you to imagine two versions of yourself. The first version keeps chasing the emotional high. He checks the phone. He rereads old messages. He tries to figure out the exact moment her energy changed. He wonders whether he said too much, not enough, too soon, too late. He makes her inconsistency mean something about his worth. He becomes careful, smaller, more strategic. He calls it love, but underneath it, he is afraid. The second version feels the same uncertainty, but responds differently. He notices the anxiety, but he does not obey it. He wants to text, but he pauses. He wants to explain, but he remembers that clarity does not require begging. He wants reassurance, but he gives himself stability first. He does not become cruel. He does not become cold. He simply becomes unavailable for confusion. Which version do you respect more? Be honest. Because the version you respect is the version she is more likely to respect too. Not always. Not guaranteed. People are different. Some people will not value you no matter how grounded you become, and that is their limitation, not your failure. But you will respect yourself. And that is the foundation everything else is built on. The silent move that changes everything is not about making her lose control in some dramatic way. It is about making the old dynamic lose control over you. The anxiety loses control. The chasing loses control. The need to prove yourself loses control. The fantasy loses control. And when those things stop controlling you, you become clear. That question will save you months of confusion, because love should not require you to constantly negotiate with your own dignity. Interest should not make you feel like you are begging for a seat at the table, and connection should not feel like you are always one message away from being forgotten. You deserve something mutual. You deserve someone who can receive your care without exploiting it. You deserve someone who does not need to lose access to you before realizing you mattered. But until that person is in front of you, your responsibility is to stop handing your energy to people who have not shown they can hold it well. So do this once. Not loudly. Not angrily. Not as a game. The next time the dynamic becomes one-sided, step back. The next time you feel yourself about to over-explain, pause. The next time you want to chase reassurance, return to your own life. The next time she gives vague energy, do not meet it with full devotion. Let your response match the reality in front of you. That is the move. And yes, she may feel it. She may wonder why you are different. She may feel the absence of the version of you that used to overreach. She may become curious, even unsettled, because the emotional pattern changed. But the real victory is not that she loses control. The real victory is that you gain it. You gain control over your attention, your reactions, your standards, your time, your peace. And once you know how to do that, you stop being someone who waits to be valued. You become someone who lives in a way that makes your value obvious. So today, do not ask yourself how to make her want you. Ask yourself where you have been leaving yourself to chase her. Then come back. That is where your power is. Not in the text you send. Not in the silence you perform. Not in the reaction you hope to create. Your power is in the moment you choose not to abandon yourself just because someone else is uncertain. If this shifted something in you, I want you to take it seriously. Not just as an idea, but as a decision. Where have you been overgiving? Where have you been explaining too much? Where have you been making someone's inconsistency more important than your own peace? Share it in the comments if you feel called to. Your story might be the exact thing someone else needs to read today. And subscribe for more conversations about attraction, emotional strength, boundaries, and building relationships that do not cost you yourself. Because the right connection will not require you to lose your center, and the wrong one will teach you exactly why you need to keep it.